Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with New York City jazz artist, composer, educator, and advocate guitarist Andy Bianco. His latest 2019 CD, New York City Stories, is a great one and a testament to the big city. So he was born and raised in Pennsylvania, and he has played with the likes of Angie Stone, Deborah Cox, Kandace Springs, Moses and George Burton over the years. He's got great stories and insights about his career and more, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Thanks for taking a minute out. I got the CD in the mail. I actually just got hooked up with your label recently, and every album I've gotten, I've totally dug, and I really want to talk to everybody. So you are definitely high on my list of wanting to see, the man behind the musician. So thanks for taking a minute out.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you again for your interest. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into the album that I'm speaking of, and it's New York City Stories. Talk to me about this project and kind of what you were going for.
Well, so essentially what this is it's a couple things. It's a documentation of my working ensembles, my working groups that I've been leading and performing with and taking around in and around New York City over the past several years that have been performing new music of mine that is inspired by my travels, my tours, my life, stuff like that, and just essentially my life in New York City. So the initial idea for it started as a writing project where I was documenting versions of songs that I've been performing a lot live, and also for the purposes of submitting to music libraries that license my music for film and TV, which I've been getting into more of. I've found that that's can be quite lucrative form of generating income from compositions and also doing recordings, which oftentimes many artists lose money on that. A lot of times you lose money making CDs and releasing music. So I'm grateful to have found some ways where I can monetize it and continually in perpetuity make money off of it. So it started as that, and then the group of people are people that I've played with for quite a long time, and I was just really happy with how the recording and the vibe of the session. So I was, well, let's do more. And then I was like, you know what, it's about time to do another record anyways. I'm gonna do it, and it sort of just kind of developed and blossomed into something a lot more, and it just really took shape into something a lot more, which is just kind of a commentary on a lot of different things. The idea of NYC Stories rather than New York Stories. NYC sort of like it's an airport code, right? I mean, so it's like, musicians, I've been grateful to travel to over 23 countries and do tours in other countries and stuff, which is something I never thought that I would do as a guitar player or musician when I was very young. And that's just something that, musicians do, which is great. So it's like you kind of get used to that sort of airport code sort of thing. Like, I'm in NYC or, I'm in San Diego or, whatever. So that's kind of ties in with the title. And then the idea of stories as, different tales of somebody's life that they try to represent artistically through music. And then also the idea of stories as, the idea of New York is for many. I mean, I don't know if there's ever been a time where I haven't heard, where I haven't heard or where it's been represented or expressed that trying to be an artist in New York City is easy. It's always been a struggle, and you always hear people venting about it, no matter what they do, and venting about how the city's changed and it's so much more difficult, and the scene is dead, and it's like it used to be, and there's no music business, and it's but I feel like that's kind of going on as long as there's been New York, it's been a struggle. So it's basically an acknowledgement of this sort of New York City struggle, but also there's deeper, more personal issues that are embedded there. If you just get beneath the surface, things that there's issues that are kind of newer issues that I've experienced through friendships and relationships of mine, and also issues that have been around for a long time, but they haven't gone away. Maybe they just went under the surface. But then there's newer stuff too. For example, newer type of issues like this sort of opioid crisis that is kind of going on and is rampant throughout the country. And I come from Pittsburgh, and I had some close friends, musical colleagues, students who have succumbed to this, and it's not addressed as much. It's more kind of, you don't talk about it as much, and I think that you can sort of tie that into an overall kind of crisis meaning, and people don't, there's a lot of stuff going on, so that's kind of a newer thing, and that has affected me directly and my musical experience just coming up in Pittsburgh, coming up in a region that used to be highly industrial. And then, the mill shut down back in the late 70s. But now this whole mid-Atlantic area, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, you got a huge opioid crisis. You got people that have been put out of work because of automation and different sort of things. You got different sort of political leanings there than you do in New York City. And then you just got a lot of difficult stuff going on. So that's an aspect of it. Then another aspect, something that has been always there, and that's just the life of being a musician can be very difficult, and this is nothing new. Jazz musicians getting taken out by that life. And in the past year, I've had a couple of friends who have been taken out, not directly by something like alcohol or drugs or opioids or anything like that, but just in my opinion, just the life and just the nightclub life and the environment, going to jam sessions in New York City late, being on that scene, playing late gigs, playing a lot of gigs where you get paid in not a whole lot, but you also get free drinks, that sort of thing. A lot of the scene, it really takes a toll on musicians, and that's something that's been around for a long time. Witnessing friends of mine whose family lives have deteriorated. So there's a lot of struggles. There's a lot of challenges with the musician life, the touring business, the late hours, the irregular schedule, trying to keep your family together in the midst of that. But the overarching theme of the record is really striving in spite of that adversity. And just as there's consecutive layers of stories in a building that go higher into the sky, it's kind of like trying to transcend these challenges to stay, within the realm of doing what's meaningful for you and striving in spite of the adversity. So that's sort of the overarching theme of it, to strive against adversity in spite of it, and to try to ascend to higher levels of understanding and meaning and being, in spite of all the chaos that's around us,
Yeah, totally. So talk to me about your childhood, where you were born, raised, and how you got into music.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My father was a professional musician from the age of 13 to about 45. And when, his first couple of gigs were parades and stuff in the small town of Arnold, Pennsylvania, which is just up the Allegheny River from downtown Pittsburgh. And he was a dance band musician when he was a teenager and into his college years and early adult life. And he would play at Roseland with dance bands from Pittsburgh. They travel to New York City, they go to Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit. So very active performing in dance bands. And then he also was the first member of his family. He came from a big Italian-American family. He was the first person in his family that got a master's degree, and he wanted to become an English teacher, and he sort of wanted to prove that you could be, Italian and not someone that delivers ice or works in construction or is in the mafia or anything like that. So that was very important to him. Music was just something that he did, and he did it professionally, and he was a professional musician for quite some time when he was first a teacher, because when he started teaching way back then, before the unions really were able to get teachers a decent living wage, he didn't make very much money. So he was a musician for quite a while and still playing, and then eventually he was able to just do teaching. So my mother was also she was interested in the classical music, and she used to like Pavarotti and operas like that. She could play a little bit of piano. My dad would always be blasting Count Basie records, and he was a huge fan of Stan Kenton. When he was in high school, he saw some of the early incarnations of the Kenton Band performing at a place called the Chess Arena in Pittsburgh, and he used to speak a lot of seeing the Kenton Band with a very young Maynard Ferguson performing, and he would go to see that with his friends in high school, and they'd stand right in front of the wall of horns there in the Kenton Band, and that just really that left a really profound impact on my dad. He just really inspired him. You know, when I was young in my household, my brother also played a little bit of saxophone, and so my brother and my dad there was musical influences. My mom too. There was the Count Basie going on in the house, and I played a little piano when I was a little kid, but I didn't really stick with it. And then I sort of started getting into guitar when I was around junior high. All of my friends were getting into it at school. You know, everyone was getting guitars. You know, Nirvana was really big. The early kind of like the Seattle movement of music and the alternative rock scene was coming into it. So everybody was playing guitar. I had a guitar class in school, and we were supposed to be in the class learning Bach and stuff like that. You know, as soon as the teacher would tell us what our lesson was to be, and to get to it, we would just turn the lights off and throw chairs, and then we would teach each other Nirvana songs and the popular stuff on the radio. So I got back into, you know, studying music with the guitar around that time, and then I just gradually started trying to play all the music that I was into, and I was listening to heavy metal, and then I started listening to alternative rock and grunge, and then I got into the classic rock, and then I got into the blues, and then jam bands, and then I got into jazz, and everything up until I got into jazz I would be able to play along to by ear. And then I remember there was one period, I think it was in the summertime, I was maybe 16, and my dad had picked up I think it was a Bill Mays trio record, which I rarely listen to Bill Mays now, but it was a great record. And he had it, and I took it upstairs to my room, and I was trying to play along to it. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was like, I can get my way through this. What is all this? So that really kind of, I sort of hit a plateau there, and then I started studying jazz further with a better, more advanced teacher. And then my brother got me hip to Miles Davis in a silent way, and Kind of Blue and Sketches of Spain. Well, when I was younger, but I started really checking that stuff out more when I was in high school, later in high school.
After all the time of being a professional musician, what do you like the best about it?
For me, just the pure act of performing, of playing the guitar, especially if it's in the service of a Grammy-winning artist or something like that, which I'm grateful to be able to do, or to be able to do it in front of a lot of people or on TV, or to make a lot of money to do it. So just the pure experience of playing the guitar, which is something I've always loved doing, and being able to get as much out of it as I can, monetarily or exposure or whatever, that's a really satisfying feeling. Because the arts, as I'm sure you know, they're incredibly difficult to monetize. You know, they're incredibly difficult to monetize. So any way that I can generate more meaning out of something I love to do, I love that feeling. That's very satisfying. Also, just getting back to purely playing guitar, the feeling of playing a great solo or really being in the moment, reacting to the band that I'm in, whatever genre it is, whether it's jazz or R&B or rock, the feeling is a very cathartic feeling. I liken it to almost kind of like a shamanistic sort of state. When I'm in that phase, I literally feel like I'm channeling the music, and I'm just channeling it. I'm basically it's coming from somewhere else, and I'm tapping into this heightened level of consciousness. And that's something. I think that's incredibly satisfying and really important, and that's some of the best things. That's some of the best feelings. When it comes to writing compositionally, I love it. A similar type of thing. Being able to use my ideas or my compositions and to monetize them, or to have them, in a film or TV, or just to become something more than just the musical idea that I had. That's incredibly satisfying. And, I almost feel like it's a type of catharsis or something very special to be able to express that. So those two things will always be immensely satisfying. But there's a quote by Jack DeJohnette which I really relate to, and he's been one of my favorite drummers, and definitely plays a lot of the music that I identify with a lot. And he says, when I play, I go into an altered state, a different headspace. I plug into my higher self, into the cosmic library of ideas. I really feel like, just from a purely guitar playing perspective, I think you can tap into that compositionally too. The way when you're fleshing out compositions, like for me with composition, a lot of times it's like I'll have this kind of hazy vision of how the song is going to come out. Like maybe I'll see the front of it, but then there's a bunch of fog in between the front where I am, and then I'll see the back of it, and then the middle kind of gradually sort of just manifests or takes shape. And it's like the process of having that manifestation occur is kind of like tapping into that cosmic library of ideas, but in a more compositional sense. Whereas like performing, soloing, live, especially like a high energy kind of improvised solo under a singer, it's like that to me is really like a shamanistic experience where you're tapping into something that's transcendent and very spiritual or religious or whatever. So those things are, I think that's the best feeling that I get from it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: why do you love jazz?
Well, I mean, that's a good question because I consider myself being pretty high in openness in terms of that personality trait, just based on personality tests that I've taken and stuff like that. So, one of the things I don't like, a lot of younger guys, they tend to be very kind of closed-minded towards things that are not their bag or their niche or whatever. Maybe like a lot of younger guys, they'll only want to play straight ahead and they write off free jazz, or they only want to play free jazz and then they write off straight ahead as being in ballad or whatever. But and I'm blessed in this sense. I've always been into a wide spectrum of music. Now, jazz was really just something that really, really piqued my interest and challenged me, and still does early on. And it really got my attention because it challenged me, and because it basically encouraged me to dig deeper and to challenge myself. So I was always really into that. And the great jazz guitarists like Grant Green and Joe Pass and Kenny Burrell, Wes Montgomery, of course, and Pat Martino, Joe Negri from Pittsburgh, Jimmy Ponder from Pittsburgh, George Benson, of course. That was really that was the music that I really studied and I went to school for. And when I came to New York, I started doing different things, different types of music, R&B, rock, stuff like that, just more versatile. But I kind of came back to jazz because I feel like I like creating jazz the most. I like performing it live the most. It's easier in a way for me to manage and do. And I tend to I make more money and I get more from my jazz compositions as opposed to my electronic music that I make or when I try to do pop stuff. I just think I'm better at that. Then the other thing is based on just my network in New York, I just know I know way more jazz musicians than I do R&B musicians or that I know rock musicians. So it's something that I've always really been drawn to. I love the sophistication of it. I love the individuality of it, I think, maybe the most. I mean, the thing about jazz musicians is they're all unique individuals. They all have this persona. Andrew Hill has such a persona as an individual. So does Herbie Nichols. So does Wes Montgomery. And, I kind of consider rock as well. So the individuality has always really drawn it to me. And just the idea of, especially in New York, like having your unique voice, and I really kind of view it as that. I would rather sound like Andy Bianco than sound, like someone that's trying to sound like Kurt Rosenwinkel, and I love Kurt Rosenwinkel, but he has his own voice. So the individuality and uniqueness of it is huge for me. And, I'm just really, really into it, And I think it's kind of cool because it's kind of like the underdog sort of musical form. Nobody listens to it, really. The generation that came up with the American Standard Songbook is aging out and passing away. So it's like there's an appeal to kind of keep something in danger of becoming extinct alive.
So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a version or perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you know yourself best. Who do you think you are?
It's a challenging question, Joe. Appreciate it.
Sure.
I would consider myself a jazz artist, a guitarist, a composer, and a musician. The one thing that, and I will say, a lot of the idea of the struggle that's involved with doing it, I definitely feel it. A lot of the ideas that I write about and the people that I'm not mentioning by name, but who have succumbed or suffered as a result of these struggles and battling those demons. A lot of the theme behind this record it is for those who battle demons. It's for that. It's a message of encouragement. to keep striving and keep battling, but the battle will be there, and that's just how it is. Ever since I wanted to play music, I had older musicians, my father, other people that had done this when I was growing up. When I played with older musicians, be like, don't do this. It's the business is too dangerous. It's like, what, are you crazy? Don't do it. It's a bad idea. But I went and wanted to do it anyways, and I remember when I was in high school, I remember thinking of what I wanted to be doing, and I remember thinking about leading my band, writing my own music, playing in the village. I remember an essay that I had in an English class when I was in 10th grade. I wrote about what I wanted to be doing, and that's what I'm doing now. So I'm doing what I said that I wanted to do when I was a kid, and I'm doing it. Looks a lot different than I thought, but in a lot of ways it doesn't. So I like to think of myself who follows his heart and says what he's going to do and does what he says he's going to do and tries to stick to it. And I've been pursuing this path because it's taken me and it's taught me a tremendous amount, and I feel responsibility to kind of follow my heart and follow my just to do what I'm best at. So I guess I perceive myself as a guitarist, an artist, a composer, but also someone that is really trying to work on himself and make himself better, and trying to chip away at the bad parts of myself, burn off the bad parts. I only want to represent to the world the best parts of myself, and I feel like music is something that can help people do that. If you follow that path and you stay true to the music, it will teach you and it'll refine you as you refine it. So that's sort of how I perceive of myself. I mean, I'm always learning. I don't perceive of myself as a star or anything like that, but I'm very grateful. As much of a struggle, and the thing is, I'm definitely feeling the struggle of being a musician and an artist in New York City now, for sure. But I take responsibility for it because it was my choice, and I'm grateful for it. In spite of the struggle, I am so grateful for what music has given me. And I think if you follow that path and you follow your heart, it'll reward you in spades. It might not look what you think it's going to look like, but I'm very grateful to it. So I perceive myself as someone who's grateful. I am very grateful for my life, my friends, my music. And I try to express that through my writing, and I try to get back to my community. I'm very much interested in doing that. I started a memorial scholarship fund for my father back in my hometown of Pittsburgh, which awards $1,100 annually to young adult students that display exceptional musical talent and skill, and they use that money towards pursuing their education. So I want to be someone that is involved in helping the arts to stay alive, and education to stay alive, and music to stay alive. So I'm trying to do that, and I do kind of perceive myself as getting into that a little bit now, finally.
Right on. Man, that's great. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Andy, thank you for taking some time out. Thank you for the music, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Pennsylvania, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Andy for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.